Were you ever intentionally taught how to have a healthy body image or how to deal with negative thoughts about your body? I was not, and I'm guessing a lot of you weren't either. Growing up in the age of teen magazine and 90s diet culture certainly didn't help me. I remember being so frustrated in my 20s about the consistent negative thinking I had about my body. God has done a lot of work in my heart and in my mind since then, but it's not always easy. I wanted today's conversation to be a starting point, a way for us to verbalize that the way we think about ourselves is important and can get better if needed. This might even seem impossible for some, but you really can learn to foster a positive body image and get to the point where positive thoughts about your body could outweigh the negative. If this is hard, know that you're not alone in the struggle. Listen in and see what your next right step might be. Welcome to the Daily Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Meredith. I've led my family on a transformative health journey for over a decade, and now I help other families do the same. This is a place where busy moms can learn about healthy living. I hope that what you learn here helps you feel empowered to take the next step in your family's health journey. Hey, Sydney, thanks for joining me on the Daily Wellness Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, you talk a lot about body image. I've been following you on social media. And I know that's what you help a lot of women with. Can you kind of tell us your story and how body image kind of fits into your story?
Yeah, sure. So I guess what I want to say is what woman doesn't have an experience with body image.
Yes.
Right? Like it's kind of hard not to. There's research that children as young as 3 become aware of their body and the way that they see their body. Years ago when I was in college, it was 5 years old, but most recent research is 3.
Wow, that's shocking.
It is. There's one study that I talk to clients a lot about, how they took moms and daughters, and first they put moms in a room with a mirror by themselves and just asked them to describe what they saw in the mirror. And of course, right, there's a spectrum of all different types of body types and types of descriptions, everything from I love my hips to I'm disgusting. And then they took the daughters, who I believe were kindergarten age, and put them alone in the room in front of a mirror and asked them to describe what they saw. And unsurprisingly, the daughters mirrored the mom's responses. And that's usually how we start to learn about bodies and the way we see ourselves, which is how I define body image, is how image that one has in their body. And so my story, I'm an only child. My mom, she wasn't like that. I mean, I hear a lot of really awful stories from clients about how their moms perceive their bodies. And thankfully, my mom wasn't that cruel to herself. It was more my dad, actually. And so I think from a young age, probably 11, I remember just like doing crunches in my living room, hundreds of crunches, just really wanting to have like a flat stomach.
Wow, at 11.
Yeah, Victoria's Secret was really big when I was that age, and like ordering swimsuits from the catalog. And yeah, I wanted that body. And at 11. And yeah, thus ensued years of disordered eating and just being obsessed with being thin enough, skinny enough, pretty enough. And then and I grew up in an environment where that was praised, and compliments on bodies. And I then became a dietitian, or wanted to be a doctor, but was interested in food. And pivoted and was like, okay, I'm not going to go to med school. Became a dietitian and loved it, but also was working with a lot of people who were looking to lose, like the last 5 to 10 pounds, and was working in New York City. And it really wasn't good for my body image. Felt really hard to tell people to eat like 11 almonds instead of 15 almonds,
Wow.
It's like, what? And kind of at the same time as that was happening, I'm sober and my alcoholism was like taking off. Mental health was declining. I was probably the thinnest I've ever been, but I was getting a lot of praise in a way. Some people that were concerned, but more so praise. And looking back at those photos, it's sad. And yeah, it just kind of came crashing. And I got sober. I went back to therapy. My therapist would not buy. Do people curse on this podcast?
Sometimes, yeah.
My therapist wouldn't buy into my bullshit. She was like,
Yeah.
"A bobblehead. What are you doing?" And yeah, I started getting help and then pivoted. I thought I would never focus on eating disorders and disordered eating. And now that's my area of focus in my private practice. And it feels really aligned. I mean, I think we come to practice what we've been through.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've had to learn how to just have a body. We all have bodies. And it's one relationship that we know we're going to be in until our last day on this planet, right? Is with this. So
that's so true.
Yeah. So got to figure out how to not hate it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So how did you know that you had some disordered eating? Like looking back, what were some of the signs of that?
Oh my God. So when I was younger, it was just kind of counting calories, tracking things, trying to eat not as little as possible, but like I was aware of how much I was eating, and then also the exercise component. As it morphed into college and then grad school, and like clean eating became really popular, and paleo, and we started to learn all these some things that are very important about food, but also it can be taken to an extreme. And so I landed with a type of eating disorder called orthorexia. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it, but I can't remember what that means.
So it's not in the DSM yet. So it's not a specific eating disorder diagnosis like anorexia or bulimia. One day, I think it will be in the next iteration, but orthorexia is a form of restrictive eating where you are obsessed with eating as healthy as possible. So we could say that we live in a culture that sometimes is a bit orthorexic, but I mean, an example is, let's say I'd be so hungry and the only option for lunch, because maybe I was at someone else's house, was food that their partner cooked and there was a little canola oil in it, right? Like, I couldn't eat that. I just wouldn't eat it. And I'd make up some reasoning around it and not eat for hours and hours and hours because I was just like, no, I can't have that seed oil, right? And that is when it crosses a line, right? There's having preferences, of course, of how you want to eat. But being so rigid. And then it interfered with my personal life, friendships, my relationship. It's hard to go out to dinner when you're so rigid about food.
It is.
So Though that was more of my kind of flavor.
Yeah. It's interesting what you said too about parents and, the stories that you hear from your clients and your own story of your dad kind of being more influential on, maybe a more negative body image. But I have 4 kids. I have 2 daughters. And so I've just, from my own past, have just wanted to be really intentional with my daughters about what I say and how I act regarding my body. It's just crazy how powerful that influences of parents on their children in regards to their body image.
Oh my God. Absolutely. And that's amazing. We need more parents like you that are aware. And it usually gets passed down, right? I mean, how our parents talk to them and it just
Yep.
goes through the line.
Yep.
And little ears are listening at all.
Right. Yeah, I know. I'm sure I'm not doing it perfectly, but I know that. Yeah.
Good to you. There's no such thing as perfect.
Right.
We're all going to slip. But I think when the intention is there, it's so beautiful, such a gift to give your children.
Right. I want my girls to, feel great about their bodies. So I know that kind of, I have to model that, right? being happy in my own body so that they can have the ability to be happy in theirs. What would you say are some signs that people have an unhealthy body image? I think sometimes we think that some things are normal, like, well, all women think that, that's normal for women to think that way or whatnot. But what would you say are some, you kind of gave us one, example of the disordered eating where you wouldn't eat your friend's food because it had canola oil, but what's stepping over the line to where we were like, okay, that's really not healthy here?
Yeah, so I think, and I love what you said. I just want to go back for a sec. You said you said show or be happy in my body so they can be happy in theirs. And I want to say that that's wonderful. And also it's really normal for people to not feel happy with their body. And I don't think that the goal is to feel happy about the way one's body looks. I think that's a lovely North Star.
Mm-hmm.
But for some people, that's really difficult. And I want to say that that's okay. When it shreds into concerning territory is if there's constant feelings, right? Like we all might feel disgusted by ourselves at times or unhappy with the way we look or a photo that's taken of us. Like that's life. But if there's constant disgust, constant feelings of loathing, running narratives in someone's head of their body and what's wrong with it, looping on different thoughts. If somebody is body checking, do you know what that is?
No.
It's a term used a lot in the eating disorder world. It's a form of monitoring of one's body that's frequent and repetitive. So an example, I used to do this a lot. Like every time you go to the bathroom, as you're washing your hands, lifting up your shirt and looking at your stomach, or, it could be all day, like touching someone touching their arm, squeezing your arm or your thigh or your stomach to see the fat or muscle or bone, touching your cheeks. So that's not a typical behavior. I think if your feelings about your body are interfering with your life, right? That's usually my rule of thumb for any behavior if it interferes with your life.
Yeah. And what are some things that anybody could do at that point? Some things that anybody could do to kind of try to break out of that cycle, that mental cycle of negativity?
Yeah, it's really hard because oftentimes it's built up over time and people aren't aware of it, that it's happening. I had a client in session last week. We've seen each other a couple times now. And I don't know how it came up exactly, but they were saying that, every time they get up, they work from home, they walk past their mirror and they stop in front of their mirror and like check different parts of their body. And they didn't know that other people didn't do that. Right. And at first, like, amazing. You have that awareness, but they didn't for a while. It was just so habitual. So I think first thing is having the awareness that you're doing it, noticing. And then if you're able to start to break that cycle. So for some people, I'll have them put like a towel or something over their mirror, especially if they work from home. Turning off self-view on Zoom, taking a break from selfies and things like that, but really trying to diminish or decrease the exposure. And then reaching out for help. Like, I think there's this idea that body image, we all just have feelings about our bodies, but it can go really deep and we often need support.
Yeah. I imagine just, being able to hopefully listen to something like this too, where you're here, you're bringing that awareness through a conversation, right? Be like, wait, what? Not everybody does that? What?
Yeah, totally. Today, someone was telling me that they realized with their therapist that not everyone has such a tough inner critic. I was like, yeah, they don't. But, people don't often talk about this stuff. It's not like we go around saying, yeah, I check myself in the mirror 50 times a day, or I weigh myself 4 times a day and like talk about it with our friends. So how could you know?
Yeah, true. Hey, Daily Wellness listeners, see if you have any of these symptoms: runny nose, sneezing, shortness of breath, nausea, bloating, constipation, or the opposite, hives, itching, eczema, joint pain. Anything along these lines could be a sign that you are having a histamine reaction. We often think that we just have allergies and we have to live with it. But did you know it's not something you just have to live with? My friend Heather has a new course that walks you through reversing histamine intolerance based off the GAPS protocol. It includes educational videos, tutorials, handouts, and meal plans. It also very generously includes all of her traditional food courses so that you know exactly how to make every food needed to reverse histamine issues for good. If you are ready to give up on the idea of suffering from allergies and histamine issues forever, check the show notes for a link to her course. And now, back to the episode. What do you say to women who think that their body has to change before they can feel better about themselves?
The hard one. Yeah, I think it's not just a one-off conversation. There's many layers to that. I think first is exploring the why. What do we think will happen when your body changes? And what's the proof? Like, what's the evidence for that?
Right.
A lot of times I hear it with dating. Okay, I can date after I've lost X amount of weight, but we haven't dated in like 5 years. So how do we know? Right. And what's underneath that? How do you have the skills to be able to date or whatever? What else goes into those things that we want to do?
Yeah.
And then there's some grief of like, okay, you want to do these things and you want your body to change. And what if you do them anyways and your body doesn't change? And that's awesome. And also there's grief. Sometimes people want the photos to look a certain way or whatever it is. Yeah, that's a hard one.
Yeah, it is. And I think for me, like looking back, I realized that, I have a health and wellness podcast, right? I love health and wellness topics. I love nutrition and all the things. And I realize now that looking back that I used to equate being thin with being healthy, like before I really understood what healthy meant from like a holistic perspective,
Yeah.
So looking back, I would just think, oh, if someone's thin or if I'm thin, then they're healthy, right? Because they're not carrying around a lot of extra weight or something like that. But obviously that is not true. There's a lot of thin people who are very unhealthy, either mentally or emotionally or even physically, right? A lot of thin people can have heart attacks or, like whatever. So that was a hurdle for me, is just like getting over my idea of what healthy was a roadblock for me in my body image journey.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think this might take us on a little tangent, but you bring up such a good point with this idea of healthy.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I'll often say to clients is, what does healthy mean to you? I think we could take 10 people and it would be different for every person.
Yeah.
It's not just eating the fruits and vegetables and the protein.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's many different aspects to health.
Yeah. I think a lot of women feel like, though, like along the thought of being thin, that if I just lost a little bit of weight and, or ate a little bit less or something like that, then that would be the answer. I would feel better and then everything in my life would fix itself. I know, you know what I mean? Is that what you experience with your clients a lot? Is that type of thinking? If my body changes, then my life will get better.
Yeah, I think so. I do. And I think sometimes it's also just that's all someone's ever known. I work with a lot of people that have been dieting for years and years and years and years before they land in front of me. And they don't even know what it's like to get off the hamster wheel of trying to change your body. Like, then what? What are they going to worry about? What are they going to fun? And I love coming at it with that of like, what is this robbing you? When so much of our brain space is spent thinking about our body, food, and how much to eat or how much to exercise or what size we could be. It's like you are losing that space to be with your kids or really be kick-ass at your job or go play in nature, whatever it is you want to do. But it keeps us stuck. And yeah, I mean, there's many different theories on it and how we can look at it from a feminist landscape too. But I just think that it's really hard for people to get out of that headspace and that things are going to be okay if they don't lose. Like, wow, if you actually stop trying to lose the last 10 pounds, let's see what your life is like. I bet it will actually be okay. But that's like
right.
Faith, taking a leap of faith.
Yeah. I love that. I love that perspective of like, what are you robbing yourself of? Because it's not really just a mental thing, right? Because our thoughts, are going to guide our actions. They're going to, inform our emotions. And so it really plays into every aspect of our life. We think it's just in my mind, it's not affecting anyone else or, affecting any other area of my life. It's just a thought, but our thoughts are not just thoughts, right?
Totally. They impact everything. I mean, I have clients that are in a habit of asking their partners asking them how they see their bodies, right? And like, that's not a sexy, fun topic, right? Some partners are like, what are you talking about? You look amazing. This thing again, it can be, we can bring it into our friendships. We can, if we're trying to shrink ourselves, but also take up space in other ways, those are two opposing concepts. And so it can really cast a cloud over a life that we want to live.
Yeah, I agree. What about someone who does have some health issues that they need to address? How can they work on that in a way that kind of protects a healthy body image? Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like, there's this thing like wrong with me that I need to fix, but I also want to have, a healthy headspace about my body image.
Yeah. So I think it depends on the thing. I think so. You bring up a good point of sometimes it's not just weight per se that impacts someone's body image, but it can be if someone has a chronic health issue or some sort of disability,
Right.
it can impact their body image of like, fuck this, my body's not working the way I want it to. And I think we can get angry about that, and that's okay. And also, how do you respect this body that you have? You don't have to like it, but we got to respect it and be kind to it, is how I feel. And if someone has a health issue, I mean, there's so many ways to address the health issue without focusing on weight.
Yeah.
Right. Again, depending on the thing, but I'll think of an example. I see some women that have PCOS, and sometimes PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, can lead to living in a larger body or making it difficult to lose weight. And there's also health issues that come from that. And one being, let's say, insulin resistance. And there's a way to work on that of making sure you're eating complex carbs and balanced meals and getting rest and exercise without it being driven by weight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. By being driven out of a true desire for health, right? And respecting your body in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. I've heard you say a couple times on your Instagram posts that, just eating less and losing weight isn't going to be the answer.
No,
What do you mean by that?
eating less and losing weight was the answer to us having all the things we want and feeling better. Then, like, I wouldn't have a job. The wellness industry wouldn't be, what is it, like trillions of dollars at this point. We wouldn't have, rises and then falls in gym memberships and people seeking other health professionals. It's not the answer. If it was that simple, everyone would be doing it and being happy and joyous and free. But we live in a society where people are not happy and constantly seeking for the solution. And so it's got to be something different, right? I often ask clients like, okay, how well has that worked for you? If a client's seeing me, then they have most of my clients have been to like 3 different weight loss dietitians. They've done at least 5 different diets. They've been to different therapists, right? And they come and see me and I'm like, all right, let's just practice eating optimally and consistently. And they're like, no, I should be eating less. And then I'm like, did that work for you before? If that really worked, we wouldn't be talking.
Right.
So, yeah, that's what I mean is it just doesn't, it's like a bit of insanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like your thought pattern, right? You're literally forming pathways in your brain. And if you're always just thinking negative thoughts about yourself, right? You kind of talked about that like constant chatter that goes in your mind, right? That's not going to change most likely with your body size. Like that's
Yes.
brain work, right? That's
Cool.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it really is retraining your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of different types of therapy that can be really useful for that. My favorite is ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. Are you familiar with that one?
No, I'll have to look into that. What is that?
It's a type of therapy that's used for a variety of issues, but it's used often in eating disorder work. There's a great book called The Happiness Trap. And it helps to teach you to defuse from your thoughts. So let's say, bless you. Let's say a constant thought that someone's experiencing is, I can't go out to this event because I look horrible in this dress. Okay. if that's been like a reoccurring thought that they have every time they go out, whatever, step one is to just first notice. I notice I'm having the thought that I can't go out because I don't think I look good in this dress. Like, it starts to create a little bit of distance between you and the thought, but it's first noticing this is a thought, this isn't fact.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of different types of therapies and modalities. But yeah, to your point, it is a lot of retraining the brain and the way that we think.
Yeah. Your example reminds me of what you said earlier. Like, that's a perfect example of something that's affecting your life, right? It's like keeping you from doing things that you would have normally enjoyed or, done previously.
Exactly. Part of hack too that I use a lot is the whole purpose is aligning your life with your values. So I'll often have clients do a values assessment where I show them a list of like 50 plus values, integrity, humor, responsibility, whatever, authenticity, and then allowing them to pick the values that ring true to them and then running their thought patterns alongside that. So, right, if I value integrity and I want to stay true to my word and I commit to going to something, but then I'm stuck at home and I'm in a body image flare up because I'm scared that none of my clothes look good on me, right? It's like, okay, so my options are stay home and bail on the plan, and that goes against my value of integrity, or I can choose to be aligned with integrity and wear the outfit that maybe I feel uncomfortable in, but do it anyway because it's aligned with that. It takes like you out of it a bit.
Yeah, I like that. It gives you different, like something else to focus on too.
Exactly.
That's also important to you. It might be important to you how you look in the dress, but integrity is also important. So you can choose to focus on that other value.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Create some space.
Yeah. So how do you help women know what to eat? I mean, in a world of like fad diets and, TikTok people telling you to eat so much protein or whatever, I don't know. Like, it's so confusing and, for someone that's, stuck in diet culture or whatnot, like, how do you help them like get a grasp on what to actually eat?
Yeah. So it's not that hard. It's not that complicated. And it's so not complicated that that's why no one does it, because it's not sexy.
Too easy.
Yeah, it's not sexy or marketable to be like, hey, when you eat, have a protein that's, anywhere from 4 to 6 ounces, have a fist-size amount of a vegetable, have like a fist or a fist and a half of a complex carbohydrate, and include some healthy fats, right? Like, that's not, I don't know how to tie a bow on that and make it like sexy. But that's it, really. And I think most of my clients that come to me know that, but there's so many rules in place blocking them.
Yeah.
Or fear, right? So people often be like, you want me to eat a carb at every meal? Are you kidding? And I'm like, I do, because then at night, maybe you're not going to go all in on your kid's cereal, right? Like so it's a lot of building back trust and with one's body and testing things out. Yeah, so that's what I tell them to eat. Does it always go that way? Not necessarily, but I usually start with a structure of we got to eat every like 3 to 5 hours, and we've got to have some protein every time we eat, and we need carbs, and it's a lot of like deprogramming, I think.
Yeah. I love that you said complex carbs though, because that is really important. We'll fill up on like simple carbohydrates that spike insulin, and that doesn't make anybody feel good. So
No, no. It doesn't. Or it could be pairing a simple carb with something like a healthy fat or a protein. So,
Right.
you know, animal crackers with some peanut butter. Like,
I love it. You talked a little bit about the pressure that women feel from society to look a certain way. What are some ways that we can kind of push back on that pressure?
yeah. So first, I would invite anyone listening to take inventory of who they're following in social media and do a cleanse. Anyone that's posting what I eat in a day videos, or if you look at their page and you feel like tight, you know what I mean when I say that? Like,
Kind of suffocated tight.
yeah, like anxious, you're holding your breath, you're like, oh, she's doing that workout, I should do that workout. Like, let's get that out of your sight.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first thing, also just noticing what your conversations are looking like day to day. A lot of my clients find themselves in scenarios where people are talking about bodies a lot. Have you ever heard of fat talk?
No.
So this research was done maybe a decade ago where researchers noticed, you know, in Mean Girl, have you seen the movie Mean Girls?
Yes.
Okay. So you know when they're all in Regina's house and they're standing in front of the mirror and Regina and some of the other girls are like, I hate my thighs. Ugh, I hate my shoulders. And then Katie or Lindsay Lohan's character looks in the mirror and she doesn't say anything. And they like look at her like, why aren't you criticizing yourself? And I think she's like, oh, my eyebrows are weird. Like, so that phenomenon of women getting together and kind of picking apart their bodies or being like, oh, I'm so bad I didn't go to my spin class. Researchers have deemed that as this phenomenon called fat talk, where when they looked at a group of women they were studying doing this, what they realized was they were almost speaking in code, in that it was easier to exchange a dialogue of picking themselves apart than it was to say, I feel lonely, or my partner's really annoying me, or my kids left for college and I really miss them. It's easier to be like, I'm so bad I didn't go to bar class, than to really.
That's so sad.
It's so sad and so interesting and true. And I think that when a lot of my clients start to pay attention to what the conversations are like around them, it can be really eye-opening to notice how people talk about their bodies or their food.
Yeah.
And not to say that you need to go on a crusade and be like, everyone stop talking about your body. But I think if we stop commenting on other people's bodies, like if you see someone and they lost weight, the inclination is often to be like, oh my God, you look amazing.
Yeah.
Right? But not doing that, like not commenting on appearance at all, will then starts to have a ripple effect where you are not thinking about your appearance as much. And it really starts to change the dynamics in groups.
Yeah. I was kind of curious about that when you said, take inventory of who you're following on social media. It just made me think like it probably is really important who you surround yourself with. And so then you went into that story about the group of women. So I'm thinking, yeah, it's if you're in a group of women who are always trash talking themselves, right? Then you're just going to normalize that even more in your own life.
Totally. Yeah. I had a beautiful example of a client who her body's changed. She's lost some weight, and someone texted her and said, oh my God, what are you doing? You look so good. And the implication in that statement, although with the best intentions, is that the version of her that was at a higher weight did not look good, right? Like that's the undertone of that. And you can't really think that way until you start doing some of this work. And this client of mine was so badass and responded, hey, I don't really feel comfortable talking about that. Thanks for saying I look good now, but I also think I looked good 6 months ago.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, that's
woman,
amazing.
yeah, the woman on the other end was like, oh my God, you're so right. Like, shit. But it's no one's fault. That's just our culture. But when we really start to pause and think about what we're saying, about like the undertone underneath that,
And we can be a part of either like, helping to break those cycles or continue them.
exactly.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a hard balance. I even find as a mom, like wanting to, teach my daughters how to have healthy bodies, and like into what makes that up. Like, how can we get good movement in? How can we get good food in? And things like that without crossing that boundary of like, I don't know how it affects your body image, if that makes sense. I'm new to this as a mom, like trying to figure this out with my daughters is like, oh, how do I talk to you about your body in a healthy way? That's what I'm trying to say, I think,
Yeah, it takes practice and people are going to mess up. Like,
Yeah.
as you said, it's new. And I think that there is a paradigm shifting of moms wanting to kind of break the cycle, which is so beautiful. And we can't be perfect. I mean, that in and of itself is one of the same of this body image conversation, right? Like, women can get so obsessed with having a perfect body, and then we can put that on to, now I want to have positive body image and I don't want to like do it bad or wrong. I've got to be perfect in this way. Really just kind of jumps from thing to thing. So
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure I want to avoid talking about their bodies altogether. You know what I mean? Because we need to be talking about our bodies and how they're changing in healthy ways and in respectful ways and kind ways. So it's interesting to try and navigate that without having done it before.
That's so really. There's one she's not a dietitian, she's a therapist. I love oh my God, I'll email it to you, but she has a great Instagram called My Body Positive Home, I think. And
Okay.
about how to navigate body image in the home with parents and children.
I like that. Yeah. See, somebody's already thought of that. Why didn't I think to go find this person?
Afford. Afford though. Talking about bodies in this new way can be a little messy at first, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for your graciousness. How do you recommend women find communities where it's healthy, where there's like a healthy mentality about their bodies?
So I think once you kind of get rid of the people on social media that feel toxic, you can start to find accounts that are spreading more of a neutral image around bodies.
Right.
Learn from them. That can be really useful. I'm running a body image group at the end of the month that women can join from anywhere in the country. It's virtual.
What's that like?
What is that like?
Yeah.
So I'm co-leading it with a friend who's a therapist. It's 6 weeks. And we're just going to explore body image. What is it? Who affects it? What does it mean to you? Some of the things that we've really talked about here, like how is your body image affecting your life? How can you start to shift it and change it and not be toxic positivity? I love my body, right? But how can you just start to feel a little bit more neutral?
Yeah.
I think finding exercise or movement classes that are focused more on how you feel in your body and are more about embodiment than, hey, let's shred for summer.
Yeah. Let's get a 6-pack. Yeah.
Yeah. I think just paying attention to language and seeing where it feels warm and less competitive and harsh is a way to tap into.
Yeah. Yeah. As you're talking about this, I'm kind of thinking like when you're on Instagram, you can kind of tell once you read something or listen to something that you just feel icky afterwards, either about yourself or just in general, you maybe just like not follow that person.
Yeah, I think too a huge red flag, honestly, is when even if people are talking about body image and stuff, but there's lots of photos of them in bathing suits and workout gear. Like when someone's body is on display, I don't think that helps to foster a positive body image. So yeah, avoiding places and spaces where bodies are on display. I mean, I used to live in New York City, and there's this gym, Equinox, which is all over the country now. But, they used to have posters of just bodies, like with cool clothing everywhere. And it's like, no, thank you. That comes to the gym to move because it feels nice. But a previous version of me would be like, I have to look like that, so I have to be here for hours. And that's not helpful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. So your community, I'll make sure I put everything in the show notes as far as, your socials and your body image group, so people can find that if they feel like they need some more support in that way. One last question that I kind of thought of is, what advice would you give to yourself as a teen girl looking back regarding body image?
Oh God, I think I would just want to tell her that it's all going to be okay and she doesn't have to try so hard. That like it really doesn't matter. I didn't get anything because of my body. My abs didn't get me into my dream school. My brain did. I didn't meet my wife because like she was obsessed with my abs. Like it just it doesn't matter so much to just go easy.
Yeah. Good advice. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate the conversations that you're having that women really need to hear.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad whenever anyone wants to talk about it because, again, it's not like the sexiest thing, but I think it's what we all need.
Yeah. And I think the conversations are what's going to make the difference.
Totally.
Thanks for listening to today's episode on the Daily Wellness Podcast. We hope that you found it helpful for your own wellness journey. And if so, we'd love for you to leave a review. Then come back and listen for review shoutouts on upcoming episodes. For more information, check out the show notes and connect with us on our website, dailywellnesscommunity.com.